welcome to Spot Rugby League. Today on this week's podcast it's just me and Jack, just the two of us, and we're going to run through all the ins and outs of every club, all the recruitment, and we're going to rate each team's recruitment out of 10 to see who's done the best business. So we'll go straight into it, Jack, and we'll go straight into Castleford. So if we go through them, they've brought in Danny Richardson from St Helens, George Griffin and Daryl Alford, both from Salford, Tyler Heppy from Toulouse and Sasaya Feki from Cronulla. And going out is Luke Gale to Leeds, Mitch Clark to Wigan, Jamie Ellis, Greg Minikin and Will Mayer all to LKR. Corey Aston, Toya...
Suayo Agoda.
That one. And then Chris Clarkson to York and Kieran Gill to Newcastle Thunder. Now, do you think Daryl Powell's done some good business there? Or
I think what he's aimed for this year is more quality over quantity in his squad. You know, he's cut down a bit. You know, like you mentioned, there's a lot of lads who've left the club. I think namely Luke Gale. Luke Gale's the big one.
Yeah.
I mean, they cut without him. Last year. Obviously, he was injured and he ruptured his Achilles, and you know they didn't experience too many big problems. I think they would have probably gone a step further if they had him. And he's already looking good for Leeds. But I think it's really exciting is the new halfback combination of Jake Truman and Danny Richardson. That's one thing that's really excited Cas fans. You can see why. You know, it's two young, hungry English halfbacks, and we haven't really seen a partnership like that in a fair while. So I think they've done all right. I really do. I think Saifeki from Australia is a really good bit of business.
Yeah.
Proven try scorer, an RL winner. Has all the credibility there. I think he'll be really good. And I think the other standout is George Griffin. He was a really big part of Salford's push to the grand final last year, and he's got that versatility about him. He can play in the front row, play in the back row. You know, he can play just about anywhere in the forwards. So I think they've done quite well. The other two we haven't mentioned, Darrell Alford's another solid winger. I think he's probably one of the best in the league at bringing the ball out from his own 20 on the kick return. And he offers a great option out there, and it's looking like he's going to push Greg Eden out of a spot. And then Tyler Heppy as well, who I think is that for me typifies a bit of a Daryl Powell signing. You know, a bit of an unsung hero who's perhaps not been making the headlines at the top level, but has been grinding it out at Toulouse for the past few years and been looking for that, you know, to make that step back up to Super League. And I watched them against Toronto in the friendly a couple of weeks ago, and Tyler Heppy was a real standout. Yeah, he really was. So I've given them a 7 out of 10.
Right.
I don't think they've done the best recruitment out of everyone in Super League, but I don't think they necessarily had to. Yeah. They've replaced the players they've lost adequately. My only sort of concern may be the lack of experience slightly in the halves. You know, Truman and Richardson, for their ages, have played plenty of Super League games, but you know they're not a Luke Gale who's, you know, a seasoned pro of 10 plus years. So that's the only sort of grey area. But I think they've recruited very well. Yeah,
I'll probably agree. I think it's probably about a 7 out of 10. Like I said, I think it is quality over quantity. I think the players they have brought in are good players. Like you said, Danny Richardson, and the way he links up with Jake Truman's going to be pivotal for how they perform this season. So yeah, I'd probably agree with you, and I think that's about a 7 out of 10 for Cass. Just where do you think Cass will finish this year, just quickly?
I think it'll be tighter this year, in and around that sort of 5th, 6th spot. I know we put our prediction video out a couple of weeks ago, and I think I had Cass at 6th. So
you sticking with that?
I think I'm going to stick with it. I think it'll be tight. I think it'll be tight. It could even be down to points difference, but I think Leeds might just edge them into that playoff spot.
Right. Okay. What is your Twitter? @Conlon.
No, don't tweet any abuse, please don't.
So we'll move on to Catalans now, and moving in. Coming into the club is James Maloney, huge signing. Joel Tompkins, Josh Drinkwater, Tom Davis from Wigan. Then you've got Jordan
Desaria.
Yeah. Do you want to
Gavin Marguerite, both from Toulouse. I think they're coming initially on sort of reserve contracts, and then obviously the big news that broke today, just before we were going to start filming this, Israel Folau, which, you know, I think, you know, if you search his name on Twitter, it'll tell you everything you need to know about what Super League fans and members of the media and people are thinking about it. You know, it's such a controversial move, I think, and you know, especially just approaching the new season. And on the back of last week's Super League launch, which was full of positivity, you know, we've got a documentary coming out, and a new regular series. They're trying to push the sport to a wider audience and be inclusive, and they just go and do that. It's like shooting yourself in the foot. It really is.
But we're obviously rating the recruitment here, so if you strip it all back,
indeed.
Israel allowed the player.
You see, it's one of those, isn't it? It's ethics versus quality. You know, and on an ethical sort of side, you'd say it's not a good move at all. And is he the type of character that could disrupt that whole Catalan side? You know, his views are obviously that controversial that surely there's going to be at least a few of the Dragons players that are going to, you know, could potentially come into conflict. You know, we're not predicting anything in that sense, but, you know, it's a possibility, it's a big risk in that sense that he could disrupt the mood and the culture around the club. So in that sense, it's probably not the best move, but in terms of quality, you know, no one's doubting how good a player he is.
Yeah.
You don't get 60 plus caps for Australia in both codes of the game and not be a sensational rugby player. So in terms of quality, it's definitely up there, but as an ethical move, it's probably, you know, as we've already seen, it's divided a lot of opinions.
Yeah. Well, I think if we go into the players that Catalans have lost, there's Greg Bird, Jody Broughton, who's gone to Halifax, Tony Guijo is a big one, Kenny Edwards, also quite a big loss, and then you've got Matty Smith, who's gone to Widnes, and Braden Williame, who's gone back to the NRL. Now, they have lost some significant names, but would you say they've replaced those that they've lost adequately? I
think so. I think Catalans have really been struggling in their halves for the past couple of years. I think, obviously, the year when they won the Challenge Cup, they had Josh Drinkwater, who they've now brought back. I think that's probably the best we've seen Catalans' halves in recent years, and that's one area they really did need to strengthen ahead of 2020, and bringing James Maloney, again, a proven Australian international, state of origin representative. He's got all the experience and all you know, he's the kind of calibre of player that does, you know, give a team confidence and could have a huge impact on how they do this year. And, you know, it'll all depend on whether or not he forms a good partnership with Drinkwater, which I personally think he will do.
Yeah.
And I think those two could be key will be key if the Dragons want to push that top 5. They really, really will.
So what are you giving them then, out of 10 rating?
I'm going to give them a 7 as well.
Right. Is that... Was that still the same before they got Falau, or has it gone up?
I think it sort of stayed the same, just because I think it balanced it. You know what I've said a minute ago about the ethics versus quality. I think that sort of balances itself out in that you add a player who's that good to a team. He's obviously going to come up with some superb plays, individually throughout the season. But it's about the impact he'll have on the rest of the team.
Yeah, I think
really show.
I think on Catalans they've got Joel Tompkins gone in. They've got the Tompkins brothers there. You've got James Maloney and Josh Drinkwater, which is a better halfback partnership than the one that won the Challenge Cup. Falau, if he gets to top form, and there's other notable names in there. They've got a strong forward pack. Catalans really get it ticking this year. I think they could be the dark horses, but I'd probably agree with your rating again. We'll disagree at some point. So we move on to Huddersfield now, and speaking of big names that have come to Super League, Aidan Caesar's their headline signing, and he's joined by Ashton Golding. Owen Trout's come from Leeds as well. And you've got James Gavitt. and then Kenny Edwards, who has come in from Catalans, who for me is a very good signing. But going out, they've lost significant names to Leeds. Alex Mellor-Cruz leaving. Then you've got Scott Grix in there. Sebastian Ikahifo has gone on a season-long loan to Salford.
That one.
Thanks.
You're right there.
And then Dale Ferguson and Matt Frawley have also both left. Now, I think looking at Huddersfield's recruitment, again, it's kind of, have they done enough to replace the players that have left? I'd say probably yes. What do you think?
I think they've plugged the gaps well enough. I mean, Aidan Caesar is the standout there, and what a player. I mean, led Canberra to the NRL Grand Final last year. You know, just came up short in the end, but you know, what an achievement for him and that side. And they do look really good, in fairness. They really, really do. They're a much different team to last year. I went to the Huddersfield-Wakefield game, the friendly last week, and they just look so sharp in attack. I think that's to do with Caesar. He's giving them that extra edge, you know, that creative flair in attack, and the likes of Gaskell and Golding have so much confidence on the back of that and are playing some really good rugby in their supporting roles. So I think Aiden Caesar's signing could be one of the signs of the year.
Yeah.
It really could, and the fact they've given him they've given him the captaincy as well, giving him that extra bit of responsibility, which is a role that I think he'll thrive in. And yeah, I think I like Huddersfield's recruitment this year. The only slight downside I think they might find is that loss of Cruz Lehman.
Yeah.
I think there was a lot publicised about how it seemed like he fell out with the club a bit, and I don't think he really left on the best of terms. Nothing's confirmed, but I don't know if they've replaced him adequately, and they've not brought in another hooker. Adam O'Brien will have a lot of weight on his shoulders this year, and a lot of that responsibility. Where last year, he was rotating with Lehman. This year he's effectively going to be an 80-minute hooker. They've got Tom Holmes, obviously, who could play backup, and also a young lad Reece Butterworth that could do similar. But it's having that top quality. Last year with Lehman and O'Brien, that was a really you could rely on both of them to rotate quite well. Whereas I'm not sure if you can do the same this year.
Yeah.
Having Lehman not there, so that's the only bit of negativity I think surrounding their recruitment, but otherwise I think they've done alright. I've given them a 7 anyway. It was nearly a 6. I promise there won't all be 7s by the way as well.
We're not. Are you doing halves? Is this just?
Alright, I'll give them a 6.5 then. 6.5 just because I don't.
Yeah,
because of the Lehman situation.
Yeah, I'd agree. I would probably go with something similar. I think. I think the thing with Huddersfield last year and why they nearly did get relegated was that loss of Danny Bro and Matt Frawley. It just didn't really work for him there. He didn't work in the halves. They lacked kind of organisation. They lacked creativity. But Caesar coming in will change that massively. But again, the loss of Lehman kind of just takes away from that. So yeah, probably I think they will be better than last year, Huddersfield.
Yeah, I'd agree.
But I don't know whether they'll have enough to be able to get into that top half, top 5.
Yeah.
Moving on, we go to Hull FC now, and they've had a significant turnaround this year in players. Coming in is Liggy Sow, Manu Ma'u, Josh Jones, Adam Swift, Mahe Fanua, Jordan Johnston, and Joe Cater, and leaving is Sika Manu, Mark Minicello, Mickey Payer, all of whom have retired. Then you've got Jez Litton, Dean Hadley, both gone to OKR, Joe Westerman, Wakefield, Danny Washbrook's gone to York, Jack Logan, Levy,
and Zongo.
Yeah, Chris Green, Lewis Bierneck, and Cameron Scott, who are both at Lee on season-long loans. Now, I think the notable place where Hull have improved is the forwards.
Definitely.
And I think that's kind of what they really needed because they lacked a lot of go forward last season, I felt.
I think often teams were able to put Hull on the back foot simply because they weren't able to win that forward battle. They had good forwards, but they just weren't, they weren't winning that battle. They weren't getting over the advantage line enough and setting that platform for the likes of Mark Sneed, Jake Connor, Albert Kelly, etc. to work the magic on the back of. But yeah, like you mentioned, they've really strengthened in that area. They've got 2 big Polynesian forwards coming in Liggy Sow and Tavita Sate, who you didn't actually mention. He obviously came in towards
of course,
the end of last year. And Manu Mau, who is one of the big name signings in the whole of Super League ahead of 2020. So I think again they have had a bit of a clear out. They've got rid of some players who perhaps were on the fringes. We're talking Jack Logan and Jeslet and guys like that, and brought in some really quality players. I think the interesting ones for me are Joe Cater and Jordan Johnston. 2 players who were in the Championship, but obviously impressed enough to earn deals. I think Johnston's been brought in to back up Danny Houghton a bit. And Joe Cater is whenever I've watched Joe Cater, he's always been really impressive. He were at Hull KR before, so he's made that move to the Cross City rivals.
Yeah.
But he's always he's a strong runner with a good pair of hands, and I think I might be right in saying that he started his career on the wing, so he's got that sort of little turn of pace before he bulked up and moved inside into the forward. So I think they're 2 really little niche signings. The only issue I could perhaps have is that they may have gone a bit overboard in the outside backs. I think I mentioned this before. Mahe Fanua and Adam Swift both coming in, and that's adding to an outside back backline that have already got Jamie Shaw, Ratu Nalago, Beretta Faraimo, Carlos Tumavave, Josh Griffin, Jake Connor if he needs to be. They've got youngsters Connor Wynn as well, Cameron Scott who's now gone on loan. there's a lot of players there. There's about eight or nine players there that could all start every week. It's just how is Lee Radford going to fit that in? How is he going to fit them in? How is he going to keep them all happy and not having one or two playing reserves every week? That is their big dilemma, I think. But there's no doubt. Again, there's no doubt in the quality. It's just how they're going to keep the players happy.
Yeah, I'd agree. And just on that, who do you think will be the back five?
The back five,
they're all fit.
I would
players.
probably go Shaw at fullback. I think's a given.
Yeah.
I think Ratu Nalago's performances last year earned him that right wing spot. I would probably say on the other wing it will be tight between Swift and Faraimo. I'd probably go Faraimo just because I think he's a bit more. He's a bit of a bigger threat. I think he's bigger than Swift and has that size and that strength over him. And also Swift was very in and out of the Saints team last year, so I'd probably say Faraimo for his consistency.
Yeah.
And I think in the centres they will probably end up with Carlos Tumavave and Mahe Fanua, and I reckon Josh Griffin will switch to the second row.
Right, interesting. Well, I've actually, all the teams we've mentioned so far have actually brought in halves now. Hull have looking like they're going to stick with Sneed and Kelly, as it looks like. You think Connor could go in there, or?
Well, I think Jake Connor's been given the number 6 jersey,
right,
and Albert Kelly's been given the 14. So I think that is, if I'm honest, I think that's Lee Radford. Saying to Jake, Jake Connor's often been criticised for his attitude, and I think we saw it in the game against Castleford towards the back end of last season where he got sin binned late on for talking back at the referee, throwing his dummy out of the pram sort of thing. So I think that's Lee Radford giving him that bit of responsibility, like, right, this 6 shirt's yours now, it's up to you to keep it, show me that you deserve it, which I think is a great move and could really inspire him to be even better in 2020. But I tell you what, as an option to have in those 3 players, it's not bad, is it? I know there's a lot of Super League teams who would love to have the option that Lee Radford does in having Sneed, Connor and Kelly as his 3 half-back options. I think Connor and Sneed will probably start the season. I know Kelly came off the bench a lot last year, and I think that'll probably the same in 2020. I think that works quite well. Kelly's a bit of a bigger body. You can put him in the back row or at loose forward if you need to, and just add that bit of creative flair if perhaps they're needing a game winner. And him and Connor are both those players who can change the game on a dime. So I think he'll again, it's a case of fitting them all in there. But it's not a bad problem to have. Right.
So what did you give them? Sorry.
I gave them an 8.
Ooh,
I think
really?
an 8. Yeah, we've stepped up. I think there's 2 teams, as we'll hear later on, that have got higher marks than the rest, and Hull are one of them. I really do like how they've recruited this year and the quality of players they've brought in. So they've got an 8.
Well, we'll move to the other side of Hull now, and
I was going to say
a lot more ins and outs to read out.
There's so many, 20 players.
If we just scan through them, the notable ones coming in: Kenny Dowell, Jordan Abdul, Jamie Ellis, Greg Minikin, Ryan Brealey. Who else have we got here? We've got the contingent from Bradford, and then
Harvey Levitt and Matt Parcell, really.
Yeah.
And
then going out, obviously Danny Maguire's retired now. Joel Tompkins has gone to Catalans, and then you've got Josh Drinkwater as well, gone to Catalans as well. Sorry. And then the loss of Mossy Masoi. Now that's obviously a big loss, and we wish him well. But in terms of the overall kind of recruitment, it's a massive overhaul.
It's such an overhaul.
Do you think it's too much of an overhaul, and what would
I think it is. I really think that KR might struggle initially in 2020 just because of like I mentioned, 20 new players. I think they've only got 11 of last year's squad still part of that team. So that's such a change, and that you can't expect that number of players to come into a club and just gel like that.
Yeah.
You really can't. They've got to have some game situations and, to start developing those partnerships and that chemistry. And I'm just not sure whether how long that's going to take. Especially when you look at the majority of those players are going to be their regulars. You've got Sean Kennedy Dowell's going to be starting every week. Jordan Abdul's likely going to be the halves with either Jamie Ellis or Ryan Brealey. So that it's all that in itself to build up a halfback partnership is hard enough. Never mind when you're trying to sort out all the other players that are around you as well. Dean Hadley's another new player, Greg Minikin, Matty G will probably being there a lot. Daniel Murray, Matt Parcell, Harvey Levert. There's so many players there that are all going to have all going to be essential for Tony Smith that haven't really played together as a group much, apart from the past 3 months or so in pre-season. So I think they're really going to struggle, and I think there is sometimes you can over recruit. And I know Tony Smith's gone into this went into the transfer market over the winter very much in the mindset of young players around the age of 23. He changed it for a couple of them. He brought in a couple of experienced heads, but mainly you look at that squad and there's a lot of youth in there, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I think you can overcompensate sometimes, and that's perhaps what they've done. So I'm not thinking it's going to be an easy ride whatsoever for KR this year. They might pick up some form around mid-season when the players have all got used to each other and built up that essential chemistry. But before then, I can't see them doing too well. I think they'll really, really struggle.
Right, so what have you given that?
I've given them a 5. Yeah, 5 I've given them. Just simply because, again, there's quality players they've brought in, Kenny Dowell, Abdul, etc. Yeah. But I think there's just too many. Yeah, just too big of an overhaul.
I agree, yeah, and like you said, there's a lot of quality coming, but when you look at the players that have gone out as well, and they've lost a lot of experience, and then you think to yourself, have they actually improved? Probably.
You're not sure.
Yeah,
I know.
I probably on paper probably not, but then have they got much worse? Yeah. Probably not. So I think a 5.
Well, as well, other than a couple of standouts, like I mentioned again, Kenny Dowell and Abdul, a lot of those players are either sort of fringe Super League or Championship. We mentioned they brought in, I think, was it 5 or 6 from Bradford?
Yeah.
Which again, there's promise there. Ethan Ryan, Joe Keys, Matty Staunton, all looking really good, young, promising players.
Yeah.
But for a team that just again escaped relegation last year, you want that statement of intent that it's not going to happen again. And I don't know if the players they've recruited are going to fill people with much confidence that will happen.
Well, I actually spoke to Tony Smith the other day, and when I asked him about setting aims for the season, and it was almost, I think he had a bit of an underdog mentality, as if we're just going to go out, we're going to take it week by week.
Which, to be fair, is a good mentality to have.
It's a good mentality to have, and I think it also underlines that he's a bit unsure about how things are going to go.
Yeah.
So, it's an interesting one with Hull KR, so it's a bit hard to judge, but we'll move on now to Leeds, and they've brought in some significant signings. Matt Pryor comes in from Cronulla, from the NRL. The big one, Luke Gale from Castleford, Alex Mellor, Cruz Leningbot from Huddersfield, and then Rhys Evans is coming on from Bradford, I think. Maybe a bit of backup there. Significant names to go out. Trent Merrin, he's a big loss. Former captain, of course. James Jones Buchanan's retired. Nathaniel Pettigrew was released. Brad Singleton's gone to Toronto. Ashton Golding, Owen Trout, and then Matt Parcell, Brett Ferris, and Sean Lunn.
And Kyle Ablett.
Oh yeah, Kyle Ablett, yeah. Sorry. Missed that off there. But I think Leeds have... Yeah, I think the players that have gone out are either, like I said, there's a couple retired there. I think the Merrin one's a big loss, but the players coming in are what we need to talk about. And I think we spoke a lot about Luke Gale, haven't we? But I think the two coming in from Huddersfield, Alex Mellor and Cruz Leeman, I think they're going to be good additions.
I think so. I think we're seeing now sort of the end of this Rhinos golden generation. Obviously, Jamie Jones Buchanan and Kyle Ablett both now retired. Both parts of the multiple Super League winning sides. And I think this is a real step in the right direction for Leeds this year. They've looked really good in pre-season.
Yeah.
I think the Gale move is a possible stroke of genius. I really do. I know there were not a lot of people saying it was a risk, which I still think it is. He's still very, very liable to pick up another injury, especially on the back of the ones he's had so far, and missing out all of last season. But I think I wrote this the other week, and one thing you don't lose as a halfback is that vision. He might not be 100% fit physically, but he's never going to lose that vision and that intelligence, that rugby league brain that he's got. And that's what Leeds have been lacking. The past couple of seasons they've had... They very much had running half-backs. They've not really had an organiser. They had Richie Myler and... Was it Lola Hay last year, I think? Yeah. For much of the season. And it was Rob Louis then came in, of course, and I think that changed fortunes a bit. But having Myler and Lola here, and I think the year before was it Myler and Moon.
I think so.
So they've not really had a dominant halfback for a while, and now Gale's come in, he's providing that. Yeah. And I think him coming in as well has inspired Richie Myler and Rob Louis both to step their game up, because again, I mentioned it for Hull FC, they've got 3 senior halfbacks that can all fill those roles, and now so have Leeds. It's not a bad dilemma to really have.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Lehman and Mellor. I think, we've not seen Lehman yet. He's injured at the minute. I think he's going to miss the first few weeks of the season, but undeniable talent. Plays for the England Knights. Really, really quick out of dummy half. I think he'll complement Brad Dwyer really well. Possibly better than Parcell did last year. I think Parcell went off the boil a little bit, just simply because of the way that Leeds as a team went off the boil. But I think Lehman really, I think that's a really smart move. I know he's got a close relationship with Mellor, and I think Mellor was really one of the most underrated players last season. He really, at Huddersfield, the way he hit the line, and I don't know how many tries he got in the end. I think it was between 6 and 9 or something, but all very similar, coming from just hitting the line 10-20 metres out and going through those gaps and going over. And he's one of the best, I think, for that in the league. And if he takes that form at Huddersfield to Leeds, and he could have a really successful season.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I think Leeds have been smart actually in keeping Richie Myler, because obviously that risk element with Luke Gale, the risk remains, but if something does happen, and hopefully it doesn't, Myler can then step in, and they've still got that backup. And
I think him and Louis started to develop a partnership towards the end of last year as well. I think last year for me there were 2 big things that changed Leeds, changed their fortunes, because towards the end of the season they became really consistent and were getting some really good results in there. And that was Louis signing, because I thought he just changed the entire complexity of their attack. He added that unpredictability, and really challenged the line and set up some really nice little pieces of play. And I also think though that Trent Merrin becoming captain was a huge thing. Now, obviously he's left.
Yeah.
We're not sure yet what effect that's going to have in terms of their Super League form. It doesn't seem to have knocked them too much in pre-season, but again, there's only so much you can take from that. But I think there's a real pressure on Stevie Ward to step up and have a similar role like Merrin did. Now, I spoke to Stevie Ward at the launch last week as well, and he said that he's talked a lot. In the past couple of seasons, he started taking on certain little captaincy roles that, without being captain, taking on little leadership roles within the side and little jobs, which I imagine will stand him in good stead for this next 12 plus months. And of course, he's got Kevin Sinfield on hand to add his advice as well. Leeds is most successful ever captain, so that could be the only sort of downer on Leeds' transfer activities, the fact that Merrin's gone, I think, but otherwise they have strengthened well. I think Matt Pryor again is another big addition, plenty of NRL experience. He'll be a very welcome addition, especially given who they've lost in the forwards, like you mentioned, Singleton, Petteru, Jamie Jones, all big influential forwards. So to have someone like Pryor come in, I think is a big boost as well.
Yeah. So what are you giving Leeds?
I think I'm going to give Leeds, if it loads up, a 7 as well. They're on par with
getting
Castleford, Catalans and Huddersfield. But now I think they've gone for quality over quantity. There's a big focus, I think, for Leeds as well on developing a lot of the young talent. Mikkel Eiledzki and Tom Holroyd, the 2 big young props, are set to have, I think, a big season this year, and there's plenty of others as well there in the mix.
I think I'd actually probably give Leeds an 8. I think I'll disagree with that.
Fair enough.
I think it might actually depend on Luke Gale staying fit. And you talk about the pressure on Stevie Ward. I actually think Luke Gale probably takes some of that pressure off him, to be honest, because he's going to be a big voice out on that pitch. So I'd probably give Leeds an 8. So moving on to Salford now, and another club that have done a lot of recruitment in and out. They've brought in Kevin Brown, Chris Atkin, James Greenwood, Ryan Lannon, Elliot Kay, Luke Yates, Rhys Williams, Dan Sargentson, Paulie, Connor Jones, Jack Ormonroyd, Sebastian Ikehefo, and then going out, Josh Jones, George Griffin, Daryl Alfords, Jake Bibby, Jackson Hastings, obviously the big one, Josh Wood, Logan Tompkins, Greg Johnson. I'll let you do that one.
Ben Nakumbawai.
That's impressive. Daniel Murray and Adam Lawton. Now, obviously, they're grand finalists last year, Salford. I think if they'd have had it their way, they would have pretty much kept the same team and added to it and built on that success. But with success, a few of the big name players have been picked off. But they have replaced them, so what do you make of it?
I think similar to Hull KR, they have had quite the overhaul, but I think they've been forced into it, really.
Yeah.
It was a bit of a double-edged sword, not winning, but getting to the grand final, because they've showcased all their best players at the top of their games. Your likes Jackson Hastings, Josh Jones, George Griffin, etc. And clubs have come calling, and they've been really unfortunate in that sense. But I think Ian Watson's recruited really well. I like the Kevin Brown signing. I know a lot of people have made jokes, I guess, about it a little bit in the fact that he's spent the past year out of the game with injury, and he's getting towards the twilight of his career now. But having experience like that, and he is the kind of player who will organise the side, and is a very vocal member, and he's arguably been one of the best halves that Super League's had in the past decade or so.
Yep.
And I think him and Lollahea in the halves could, perhaps not on the same scale that Hastings and Lollahea did last year, but have a similar impact. And I don't think the Kevin Brown signing is as bad as everyone's making out. Again, he's got huge boots to fill, but I think he could do it. I think Luke Yates is a really big one. I think he went under the radar a little bit last year for London, but he was superb. I think he was in the top 2 stats chart for tackling, and possibly for meters as well. I might be wrong on that, but he was a real standout in the London forward pack and led from the front and was just a workhorse. That is what essentially is. He's just a workhorse, and you can rely on him to do the hard yards and put the effort in the defence, and I think that's a really shrewd bit of business. Similarly to Paulie and Sebastian Ikehefo, so you've got me doing it now. 2 huge units, 2 huge aggressive players who will provide that go forward that they need, and replace the likes of Jones or Griffin, who've been doing that in previous seasons. I think it's also worth noting as well that as much as they have lost those players, they've retained their front row pairing of Gil Dudson and Lee Mossop, who was superb last year. They were really, really influential in that go forward, in setting that platform, and bringing in guys like Paulie and Ikehefo will simply just complement them and provide a bit of rotation. So I think it's tough because, like I said, they've been forced into making a lot of changes. But at the same time, I think they've brought in some very good players. Yeah,
I agree, and I think I agree with you on the pack. I think, I like Salford's pack. I like Joey Lussick at hooker. I like the back line. I like Niall Evalds. I think they've got a great side. So it's the big one, the big boots to fill, Jackson Hastings. And yeah, I think Ian Watson was saying the other day that everybody's talking about the big halfbacks that have been signed by clubs, Maloney, Widdop, but nobody's talking about Kevin Brown, and he's had a really good pre-season. He walked up to a standing ovation, I think, in one of the friendlies against Lee. So yeah, I think Salford, again, might surprise people. What are you giving them rating?
I've given them a 6, which is a bit harsh given... I just think... You look at Hastings and Jones and Griffin, they're the big 3 for me, and how good they were. And as much as there has been some good players signed that will perhaps replace them in a way, I don't... You think they'll surprise people. I think they will, but not to the extent they did last year. I think they'll struggle to make the playoffs, I think. They might be just about mid-table, but I think they will struggle. But I took one player I just wanted to mention... I'm looking forward to seeing for Salford is Connor Jones, who is a hooker who has been signed from Featherstone. He came in mid-season for Featherstone last year from it was one of the lower league sides in Australia, and he really impressed for them. He really did. I know Cameron King was absent for Featherstone a few times, and Connor Jones really stepped up to the mark and has now earned a move to Salford, and he's likely to be their second choice hooker behind Joey Lussick after they lost Logan Tompkins and Josh Wood. And then even behind him, they've got another young lad called Connor Aspey, who I think he's 17. He's been playing for their development side, their foundation development side, and has now been offered a reserve contract. So I think Connor Jones and Connor Aspey could really do some bits this year.
Right. Yeah. I kind of... I agree with you, and I see why you've given them a 6, because I think you feel that the players going out probably too much. But I think Ian Watson's in a situation where it would have been almost impossible for him to replace those that have gone out. I mean, he's lost the reigning man of steel. And I actually think he's done really well, and they've brought in players who are, I think Dan Sargentson will be a great signing.
Yeah, we haven't mentioned him.
So yeah, I think Salford, I'd give Salford a 7.
Fair enough.
But I can see why you've gone with a 6.
Yeah.
Now we get on to an interesting one now, the champions St Helens. Saved me a job here because they haven't brought anybody in.
Yeah.
And then going out, they've obviously lost Danny Richardson to Castleford, Adam Swift to Hull, Luke Douglas gone back to Australia, and then they've lost Liam Cooper, who a young player, to Widnes, and then Ryan Morgan was released. Now, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because the big signing at St Helens is the coach. Now, they've lost Justin Holbrook, but I mean, bringing in Christian Wolf is a great coup. But just on the actual playing squad, do you think those going out are really going to make much difference?
You see, it is an interesting one because the players they've got rid of are all on the fringes anyway. I mean, Liam Cooper, Luke Douglas and Ryan Morgan spent most of their time at different clubs last year. Cooper was with... who was Cooper with? I can't remember now who Cooper was with. Oh, Halifax.
Yeah.
All last season. Ryan Morgan was with London and Luke Douglas with Leeds. So those three you sort of discount, but Swift and Richardson, as much as they were very sparing in when they played last year, I think it's still good to have that depth and have players like that you can rely on. That, say Tommy Makinson or Egan Grace gets a big injury, you've got someone like Adam Swift that you can call on.
Yeah.
And this season they don't have those two players in, obviously, and might be not have the same quality in terms of backup as they did. I think the way that they've approached it is they've backed their academy, they've backed their youth system, and the academy and the strength of players that they always have coming through those ranks. And Saints have relied on that, are going to rely on that heavily in 2020 because they've lost these players. So it's a difficult one because you look at the roles that they had. I mean, we talk about Richardson and Swift. Richardson was playing back up to Lomax and Fage. It's likely that they've got Jack Wellesby, obviously, who can fit into the halves or at full-back, and they've got a young lad called Lewis Dodd as well, who's a really, really promising young half-back. In terms of Swift, you've got Matty Costello coming up through the ranks. You've also got a lad called Nico Rizzelli, again another youngster who is set to break onto the scene in the next couple of years. So they're not overly... I don't think they need to overly worry about the players they've got. But when you look past them, maybe number 20 to 22, a lot of the lads past that are very low on experience and are all young, hungry players, which is great, but haven't really played too many Super League games, and that's why they may struggle. So it's a really odd situation because you hardly ever find that a club doesn't recruit at all.
Yeah.
But Saints have done, and I don't know. We'll see. I've given them a 3 anyway.
Right.
I've been harsh just simply the fact that they haven't recruited anyone. I think Christian Wolf as a coach, I think, is a good replacement for Justin Holbrook. Of those who were mentioned, I think he was probably one of the best suggestions and one of the best options they had. So I think they've done well on that. But I think they've not lost any big players, which I think is good for them. But the guys they have lost, I think they could have done well to keep.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think it's a 3 or a 4 for St Helens because even though they are the champions, they've still got that squad, pretty much the whole first team still in place. I just feel that you need to, no matter whether you're winning titles or not, I think especially when you're winning titles, you need to be able to just bring that like 2 or 3 players in just to freshen it up, just to keep everybody on their toes and
have that bit of unpredictability.
Yeah, that's it. And I think when you look at the teams that are going to be trying to catch them, they have improved their squads. Yeah. And I think that gap, I think it's going to be a 16-point gap was going to be bridged a little bit anyway. I mean, it's hard to see them winning by that margin again, but I think it will be significantly bridged now because they've just not brought anybody in.
Could you see them signing someone mid-season, maybe? See injuries
I think
do
potentially,
hit them hard,
especially in the halves, because if one of those halfbacks gets injured, then they don't have a Danny Richardson to bring in.
Yeah, that's true.
And you talk about the youngsters, obviously Lewis Dodd in there. Is he going to be thrown straight in and play say an injury happens early in the season, is he going to be thrown in there and play 20 rounds of Super League? It's going to be very tough for him. So, I think that potentially could happen. But, I mean, it's one of them, isn't it, where you would kind of, like we spoke about Leeds keeping Richie Myler.
Yeah.
I think Saints, I know it's hard because Danny Richardson wants to play first team rugby league and he's good enough and he's been in a dream team. But at the same time, you'd think they would have just been able to give him enough game time to keep him happy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting one, and I think the next club we're going to speak about is very interesting because Toronto, as we all know now, have got the smallest squad in the league. They've only brought in 3 players: Sonny Bill Williams, Brad Singleton, and James Cunningham, and going out Ashton Sims, Bob Beswick, Ryan Brealey, and Nick Rawswan. Now, it's a difficult one with Toronto because we know Sonny Bill is the marquee player. We know now that it's difficult for them with the salary cap.
Yeah.
They're talking about dispensation, but we'll probably get on to that. But is there an argument to say the big signing of Sonny Bill, if you're looking at the bigger picture, maybe they maybe could have held off on that and brought in 3 or 4 players?
I don't know. I think the thing with Sonny Bill, I think, is I think in terms of the salary cap argument, I think that's completely irrelevant, just simply because of the fact he's a marquee player.
Yeah. Most
of his salary doesn't count on the cap, so I don't think you can really consider that a mistake and an oversight. So I think, they initially needed to bring in that big name, because I think I know we've been having this argument in the office all week, about the dispensation and what they need to do moving forward in Canada, but I think their main aim at the minute needs to be to grow their fan base and to grow the game in Canada. I think bringing in a big name like Sonny Bill Williams does exactly that. He will have a big pull, he will get people through the door. But you look at the other names they brought in, Singleton and Cunningham, both solid players. I think they're great acquisitions. But yeah, like we mentioned, the 23-man squad that they've got is it's so slim.
Yeah,
they get a few big injuries and that's that. I mean, we've seen that Super League now, as the new rules state, teams have got to name a 21-man squad before games.
Yeah.
Well, if Toronto get 3 injuries, and they can't even name that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's one of those.
There's no reserve squad neither.
They haven't got a reserve squad. They haven't got an academy squad. I think I saw a report a few weeks ago that they may be looking at bringing in Quinn Nguati, who was the young Canadian they signed in their first season. I think he left midway through 2018. There was a rumour that he may be coming back, but I think that's since died down a bit. But I think he would have been a cheap option just to give him a bit of depth. But yeah, I think if they get the dispensation, they'll bring a couple more in. I think that's a definite. They will bring a couple of players more in, but as it stands now, 3 players in and 4 players, well, 5 if you count Greg Worthington, who's gone on loan to Featherstone.
Yeah. It
doesn't look good for them, it really doesn't, and despite the quality they have brought in, the sheer lack of numbers is really worrying for them, and I've given them a 6. I think Sonny Bill dragged them up to the 6, but they would have been around a 4 and a 5 if he wasn't there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think they're really going to struggle this year.
Yeah, I agree, and I think we'll probably get on to the topic of dispensation in another chat, but the Sonny Bill Williams signing, I think, is one that you just can't turn down.
No.
I think if you have a choice of having that, I don't know, a 26, 27-man squad or having a 23-man squad that has Sonny Bill in, you're going to have Sonny Bill Williams in there, and I think as a club and as a competition we couldn't turn that opportunity to sign him, which is why I think they may get the dispensation. But even then, it's you look at the squad and you look at the players they've brought in, and I think everybody just thought Toronto were going to go crazy when they got promoted.
Yeah.
They were linked to all these players. Israel Folau was one of them. But it's not happened, and obviously we know now with Brian McDermott coming out and telling us about the salary cap situation, that's why. So it's a 5, 5 from me. What did you give him, a 6?
I gave him a 6, just simply on the basis that the quality I've brought in is good, but there's just not enough of them.
Yeah. Move on now to Wakefield, and it's an important season for Wakefield. Obviously flirted with the drop last year. they've recruited quite well, I feel. They've brought in Jay Pitts and Alex Walker, both from London Broncos. Joe Westerman and Chris Green, both from Hull. Josh Wood from Salford. Brad Walker from Widnes. And Adam Tangata is on a season-long loan from Halifax and going out. Anthony England, Paulie, Tyler Randall, Chris Anakin, Keegan Hurst and Lewis Ray and Luke Hooley. Now, I definitely feel, looking at that, they've brought a lot better players in than what have left. But how do you see it for Wakefield this season?
I think they've gone for a bigger squad straight away. I think the guys they've brought in are really the kind of players that will flesh out that side and give them more options in more positions. In terms of quality, I think again you look at the squad and it's a lot of solid players, very solid players who are reliable and that you wouldn't, as a coach, Chris Chester won't hesitate at throwing them in there. You talk about Jay Pitts and Alex Walker, both superb for London last year. Joe Westerman, seasoned pro in Super League. Chris Green, another one who's never sort of hit the headlines but always been a fairly decent prop at Hull. Josh Wood, a couple of really good seasons at Salford. I think he was their club player of the year a couple of seasons ago. Brad Walker at Widnes, and again he's one for the future. I think he's going to go on loan to Newcastle Thunder all season, so that'll be good for his education. And Adam Tangata, who has arguably been one of the best forwards outside of Super League for a number of years. So I mean, he got his chance with Wakefield towards the back end of last year, and they've now brought him in again. So I think there's no one there that stands out as a game changer. There's no one there that perhaps will strike fear into opponents. But in those players that have been brought in, you'd probably think they would improve the squad in general. The squad quality as a whole has gone up, while perhaps the individual players themselves, the level of quality hasn't. I think that makes sense. About. But no, I think they've made some solid acquisitions. I think compared to who everyone else has signed, you look at Huddersfield who were in a similar situation. I think they've gone out and bought better than Wakefield have.
Right.
A lot better than Wakefield have, with Caesar and Golan, etc. We've talked about them already. So I think Wakefield might be in a similar position to last year. Perhaps slightly better on balance of the depth that they've got, and that should they pick up injuries, they shouldn't be in the same position they were last year, where they're really struggling to find players to replace them, because I think that's one of the things that really knocked them last year was injuries. It was a bit of a freak accident, I guess, in a way, and that really affected their season outcome. So I think this year they'll be a bit more confident with the side they've got. They have, of course, just signed Roman Navarrete as well, from Wigan, which I think is another brilliant signing in the forwards. I think he's a really underrated forward. But yeah, I think I've given them a 6 again. I think Wakefield, because nothing groundbreaking. But just a solid group of players.
I'd probably give them a 6.5. I think the signing of Navarrete is important because obviously they've got a lot of injuries in the forwards at the moment. I like the signings of Jay Pitts and Alex Walker, both from London, both stood out, and like you said, the experience of Westerman and Green, I think will help them. I think on paper the squad is a lot better than last year, and I think they'll be able to cope a bit better now with the injuries. But at the same time, you're looking at it, and I'd probably agree with you, there's nobody there that really blows you away, and I think Wakefield have got a solid team. I think they'll probably be in and around the middle of the table. I actually think they'll probably be a bit better than what you've predicted, but I'll give them a 6.5. Right, moving on now to Warrington, and again I think they've recruited quite well. They've brought in Gareth Widdup, Anthony Gelling and Keenan Brand have both come in from Widnes Vikings. Matty Ashton, who was a Championship's top scorer last year, comes in from Swinton. Sammy Kabula comes in from Wigan. Leilani Latu comes in from Gold Coast Titans, and Kyle Shelford has just come in from Swinton. Going out at Warrington is Bryson Goodwin, Kevin Brown, Lama Tarsi, Pat Moran, Harvey Levette, and that's it. Harvey Levette's gone on a season-long loan to Hull KR. So, do you think we're all saying, is it going to be their year? Do
Yeah.
you think the signings have brought in Warrington? Do you think they're going to be a lot closer to St Helens this season?
I think there's a good chance. I think Widdop is that star quality that they wanted in the halves. They've had a season of Blake Austin playing alongside Deck Patton, and I think Widdop will really come in and shake that partnership up. And him and Austin as a halves partnership is one heck of a prospect. I know he's injured at the minute and for the start of the season, but once he gets back to fitness, that's going to be a really, really interesting halves pairing to watch. I did think initially they were a bit light in the forwards.
Right.
And then they signed Lailani Latu from Gold Coast. Just another big body. Really, really big forward. Versatile and mobile. That'll complement the likes of Philbin, the likes of Hill, Mike Cooper, etc. I think that's a really, really smart move from them. I know they were looking for a forward. They kept that number 16 shirt free. Now it turns out for Lailani Latu. I know they were in with a couple of other players. And I think Matty Ashton, as well, is one player that will really surprise people. He has been really good in pre-season, really, really good in pre-season, playing at full-back. I can't think of him. I think he has been named in their 21-man squad for the first game against Warrington.
Against Wigan.
Against Warrington. Against Wigan. And yeah, he's sort of he's a bit of an unknown quantity. He was really good for Swinton last year. Really surprised everyone. I think he won the Young Player of the Year in the Championship.
Quick as well.
Very,
really
very quick.
Yeah.
And has earned this move to Warrington, and he could line up at fullback. I know Tony Smith, Steve Price was talking about possibly having him at fullback with Ratchford and Austin in the halves while they've still no Widdop. So what a move for him that would be. Just a couple of seasons ago he was playing for Rochdale Mayfield in the amateur game, and now he could be set to line up in round one of Super League. So yeah, I think Warrington have again strengthened where they needed to. I think Gelling's a good signing as well, obviously plenty of Super League experience. A couple of younger players in Kabula and Brand there are ones for the future. So no, I think Warrington have been impressive in who they've brought in. I've given them a 7.
Yeah,
I think is a fair reflection on what they've done. Again, a couple of really star quality players, but at the same time they've been sensible and look to build for the future as well.
Yeah, I think I'll probably go for a 7.5 for Warrington. I feel Gareth Widdop is such a huge signing now. I know he probably hasn't quite hit it off international level for England and Great Britain. I mean, he's been good, but I don't think he's reached the levels what he's hit in the NRL, and I think the style of Super League will suit his game no end. And like you say with Matty Ashton, he gives them that option and to shuffle around the pack for when Widdop's not available, and like I said, pace to burn. So I think Warrington's recruitment is probably one of the best in the league actually, even though they haven't actually signed that many players. We'll move on now. Finally to Wigan, and they've only brought in, is it 4 players? Five players. George Burgess from South Sydney Rabbitohs, Jackson Hastings and Jake Bibby, both from Salford, Mitch Clark from Castleford, and Kai Pearce-Paul from London Broncos. Going out, quite a few. We've got George Williams, Dan Sargentson, Tom Davis, Sammy Kabula, Callum Field, Josh Woods, Craig Mullen, James Worthington and Gabe Hamlin and Jared Sammer. Now, quite a few names going out there, but the players they've brought in, I mean, George Burgess and Jackson Hastings straight away.
I was going to say, I'm going to straight in. I've given them a 9. I think they've had the best recruitment out of everyone, just simply because, again, they've got rid of a few players that perhaps they clearly don't think are going to make it into that first team, especially a few youngsters, the likes of Craig Mullen, James Worthington. Let them move on, find their careers elsewhere, and brought in some real talent. I think Jackson Hastings and George Burgess are the 2 standouts, obviously. International players. Hastings, man of steel at the minute. Burgess has been setting the world alight in the NRL with his brothers for the past few years at South Sydney. Perhaps gone off the boil a bit more recently, but still a huge signing and a huge name to have in that forward pack. And then Jake Bibby and Mitch Clark as well, 2 up-and-coming players who've shown some real promise in the past few years. Jake Bibby was obviously part of Salford's side that got to the grand final last year. He'll be so much better for that, and will likely play a big role in the outside backs for Wigan this year. Mitch Clark, an athlete of a bloke. If you see him, you'll could tell he's a rugby player.
Yeah.
He's built really well, built really physical. And I think he'll really benefit from having the likes of Burgess, Sean O'Loughlin, Liam Farrell, forwards who've been in the game for years and know what it's about, to learn from. I think it's a really good story. He came from quite humble beginnings. Started out with Doncaster. They were his first professional club over here. Moved up to, I want to say Featherstone. It might be Featherstone. I might be wrong.
Yeah.
But moved his way up the leagues and has now got a move to Wigan. This could be a real big season for him. And Kai Pearce-Paul again is one for the future. He's yet to make a first team appearance for any club.
Yeah.
But has been outstanding for London's academy. So I think Wigan have very much recruited where they've needed to. They've not gone overboard like perhaps some other clubs have. Like I mentioned, maybe Hull have gone a bit overboard on their outside backs, but I think Wigan have identified the areas where they need to strengthen or they need to replace, and gone out and done it effectively as well. Got in Burgess, Hastings, Bibby and Clark for the depth, and then Pearce-Paul for the future.
Yeah, I've given them, well, I'm going to go with an 8.5. I think I wouldn't quite stretch to a 9 because I think losing players like Dan Sargentson, and obviously George Williams has left as well. You can't ignore that fact. He's been terrific for Wigan over the years.
Yeah.
But I have to go with you. And
but I think the guys they've replaced them with, sorry to cut in, but I think Bibby's there to replace Sargentson. They've obviously got Chris Hankinson as well. So those two will be competing for that centre spot with Oliver Gildat on the other side. And then, yes, George Williams has been superb for them.
Yeah.
What better player to replace him with than the reigning Man of Steel?
Yeah. Well, I do agree. I'm just saying, I think you could probably give them a 9 if they'd kind of kept George Williams and then added Jackson Hastings. I know that's not realistic.
Do you need them both? They've got so much depth in the halves anyway. They've got Bevan French, of course, who we've not mentioned yet. They signed him towards the back end of last year. They've already got Tommy Luluai as well, and they've got a young lad called Harry Smith, who's expected to break onto the scene in the next couple of years. So I don't think they needed to. I think they've only signed Hastings because Williams has left. I don't think they've gone. Like I said, they've not really gone overboard in areas. They've just signed where they need to sign.
I've given them an 8.5. 8.5 I think.
All right.
I think obviously George Burgess former. I mean, he was the best prop in the NRL at one stage. Jackson Hastings, and like you say, signing players who are going to hit their peak soon. Jackson Hastings is probably about there now, and you spoke about Mitch Clark. I remember watching him in a game for Featherstone actually a few years ago at Batley. Yeah, and he came on, and I've never seen a forward just be so dominant in such a short space of time. Yeah. He had about a 20-minute stint. And I think when he came on, Batley were winning 6-0, and when he came off, I think Featherstone were about 24-6. So he was that dominant, and he just had a bit of a smirk on his face when he walked off. He's just got that bit about him as well, or he's going to put himself about. He's not afraid of anyone, and I think he'll fit the Wigan kind of way perfectly.
Wigan mould,
yeah. And like I say, I think it's difficult when you're looking at the players that have gone out, because I mean, you look at Jared Samet going, for example, which I think is a great backup in case there's some injuries in there.
He is, but again, like I mentioned, they've got Harry Smith, who, as much as I think he's only played a couple of games for Wigan in their first team, he's been academy captain. He's led them to academy grand finals and academy trophies. He played for the England academy side that beat the Australian schoolboys. He played for the England Knights at the end of last year. That, for a young lad who's only played a couple of games of first grade, that's not a bad reputation to come in with.
I'm trying to justify this 0.5. I'll give him a 9. I've had enough. Right, guys, that's all our ratings. I think Wigan probably got the best rating out of everybody.
Wigan then Hull.
Yeah.
Wigan and Hull.
Yeah, so there's a lot of players coming in and out. Let us know which teams you think have recruited well, which players you're looking forward to seeing the most. Please like, subscribe and comment below.